Have you ever reviewed your vendor's questionnaire responses and thought, how can I make sure that that's accurate? We do want to trust our vendors, but as the old saying goes, trust but verify. Hey everyone, welcome back to Threat Thursday. I'm Bradley Geldenhuys, and on this channel, we deep dive into everything third party risk. If you're new here, we explore various aspects of cybersecurity with a focus on managing the risks that come from your organization's relationships with vendors, suppliers, and other third parties. In previous episodes, we've examined email security and DNS configurations as indicators of third party security posture, and we've explored why trust centers are the way of the future. If you missed those, check out the links in the description below. Today, we're going to be taking it a step further by looking at external asset exposure, specifically what a company's domain and subdomains can tell us about their security stance and potential vulnerabilities. When we talk about asset exposure, we're referring to the digital footprint that organizations leave online. Their websites, subdomains, internet-facing services, and other components that are publicly visible. These assets can provide valuable intelligence about the size and complexity of their infrastructure, technologies they're using, potential entry points for attackers, and forgotten or unmaintained systems that might be vulnerable to threats like recently released CVEs. But the main reason you want this information is to make sure that their due diligence questionnaire responses or their cybersecurity policies that they've provided in their trust centers can be validated. So if you have a question that asks specifically, does your organization ensure that all internet facing assets are protected by properly configured firewalls with no critical services directly exposed on standard ports without appropriate security controls? Or does your organization enforce encryption for all sensitive data in transit, including communications between internal systems with external parties? And the vendors have answered yes. Well, a quick passive check for non-encrypted ports, or let's say RDP ports, are open to the internet, will invalidate that claim, which is a huge red flag. Understanding this exposure is crucial when evaluating third-party risk, as these assets represent potential attack surfaces that could lead to compromises affecting your organization. But before we dive into tools and techniques, let's address an important question. Is this type of reconnaissance legal? While I'm not a lawyer, and you should consult legal counsel for your specific situation, here are some general guidelines. Passive reconnaissance of publicly available information is generally considered legal in most jurisdictions. This includes looking up a domain register, identifying subdomains through public DNS records, checking publicly available SSL certificates, using search engines to find references to domains. However, there are important boundaries to respect. Never attempt to access systems without authorization. Don't perform actions that could disrupt operations or services. Be mindful of terms of service on websites you visit. Consider rate limiting your requests to avoid being perceived as a DOS attack, even if you have permission. And some advanced scanning techniques may require explicit permission. The key distinction is between passive observation of what's already public versus active attempts to test or penetrate systems. We'll stick to the former in today's demonstration. Now let's look at some tools we can use for legitimate asset discovery. Okay, so let's deep dive. Right now, what we need to do is we want to identify two things. We want to identify domains and subdomains of the vendor, and we want to identify their IP so that we can link it to a scan that will bring back all the ports that are exposed to the internet. So with those two things, subdomains and IPs, we can then link it to a scan that will bring back the information on that vendor. And so we can do it manually, we can automate it, and of course, we're going to show you how Vendifi does it. So first things first, let's have a look. We're going to say vendifi.io is the target, and we can do a number of things here. So we can do a DNS lookup, and it's going to bring back the IP address. So this is going to be important for later when we need to identify a little bit more. And you can do a few other lookups here that will give you as much information as you can possibly imagine on the vendor as to where they do mail, and we've gone through that in our DNS and email security in previous episodes. But today we're just going to go, cool, let's identify the IP address. But this just gives us the IP address of vendifi.io. Yes, we can jump into the terminal, we can say ping vendifi.io, do the same thing. But what we need to do really is we need to find more subdomains. So how do we do that? Well, head over to crt.sh. That's going to give us a location to find any certificates that have been registered to Vendifi.io or any of the subdomains. So straight away, that's going to give us a pretty cool result. And so here we go. We can see that auto.vendifi.io has been released. And by the way, if you're watching this, that's where you can get your certificates, not your certificates, your questionnaires automatically populated based on your company policy information. If you've been checking me out on LinkedIn, you can go ahead and look that up. But yeah, so we've got auto.vendifi.io, we've got www, which is the website, that is the parent domain. We've got MTASTS, which if you've also watched a couple of the episodes, that's to enforce SMTP encryption. And so, yep, we've got a few different subdomains here. So that's fantastic. So now we can take those subdomains and we can make a list of them and we can add that to our checklist. But we want to find more. And so there's a little hack here. You can use something in Google called site : and that little prefix with the domain will basically bring back any result you can find on the web where that site is actually mentioned. So it will bring back information like this. So the website is mentioned over here, but possibly in other areas, they might mention other subdomains, which will then obviously we can add to the list. So if they're not showing up for some reason in the search area, they might show up in this way. So that's pretty cool. Then we can move into the automated space. And whilst they are not a sponsor of the channel, Pentest Tools does have light scan, deep scan. This, however, does start to get into a legal gray area. Whilst they are doing the scan, they might not be doing it passively. There might be some active elements to it. I think in the light scan, it's all passive. I'm fairly certain in the deep scan, it's not. However, we have permission. So we're going to run the scan, and this is going to bring back as much information as it can. And again, this is a free to use. I think it's got 2 free scans, but what it does do is it lists all of the subdomains it can find as well as the IP addresses, which is exactly what we need. And so then we've got that information, so we're happy. We've got subdomains, we've got IP addresses, we're loving it. What we want to do now is see whether or not these what ports are open on these to confirm that the vendor has actually got encryption enabled on their services. So let's have a look here. We're going to open this up. We're going to say, cool, I've got this IP I want to test. So what services can do this? And what we need is an internet connected devices and services search engine, something that searches the entire internet for what's running on your services. So basically the world's biggest port scanner. And so there are a few. And straight away, Shodan is numero uno. Shodan Safari has been around for years. You pump in an IP address, it's going to tell you what ports are open on that specific server and give you some details around it. But there are some big players as well. Census is known in the game. Zuma, I've used it a number of times with their APIs. Also, Zuma is excellent. Fofo is something new to me, as well as Binary Edge. And then there's also Geldenhuys. I actually checked out Geldenhuys because they mentioned it. Also, pretty cool service. So you've got a bunch of options here to get that information. Today, we're going to do a quick Shodan Safari. So we're going to pump in that IP address that we got earlier, and we're going to have a look and see what the result is. And so we can see here, okay, it's on an AWS environment, and they've got port 80 open, but it's okay because they have a 308 permanent redirect, which means that it redirects the traffic directly to 443 so that it is always encrypted. And are there any other ports open? Nope. And the certificate is valid. And so, fantastic. Your SSL traffic is 100%. Now we can do that for all the other IPs that we found. And get the results and make sure that the due diligence questionnaires are accurate. And of course, we can then automate this by using a sub finder and plugging it into APIs on any one of these search engines and get the results. You've got Discovery Sub Finder, and that is a fantastic tool, and it will allow you to plug into a number of different APIs of any of the options within the space. So you can go ahead and scan the entire internet and get everything back, and then pump that into an API to get the results so that everything is 100% passive. Or you could just use Vendifi. Vendifi does it for you, captures all of the information of your vendor, does a quick domain scan, and checks to see whether or not there's any known CVE and vulnerabilities there. So there you go. Vendifi can do it all for you, or you can have fun and build one yourself. Understanding a third party's external asset exposure gives you valuable insight into their security posture and potential vulnerabilities that could affect your organization. But most importantly, can validate their due diligence responses. As always, use these techniques responsibly and ethically as part of your vendor risk management program. If you found this helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe for more Threat Thursday content. Drop a comment below with questions or suggestions for future topics you'd like to see covered. And until next time, stay safe out there.